And we're back on this Saturday morning with our second installment, our second week of a very exciting new program on Westplex News Talk 94.1. It is all about nutrition. What about nutrition? And it's from O'Fallon Nutrition, David Gall. David, again, we had a really good first half of this program. What's in store for the second half?
Well, I think for the second half, maybe we can just kind of talk about some of these issues that have come up maybe in our own lives with factors involving these macronutrients. And I'm trying to bring this into people's minds as something that, well, it's a big, scary-sounding word, macronutrient. It's a really basic kindergarten-type concept. And I would just like to have everybody kind of understanding that. It's going to be something that we'll be talking about a lot in this show. It's an issue I see come up all the time at the store, and I'm a big advocate of what I like to call nutrition literacy. Sometimes you hear the phrase science literacy, which basically means, like, do you understand some of the basic concepts? And that's what I'm trying to promote in the world of nutrition. You know, a lot of the products that we sell in our store play into things like this, and in order to properly understand how to get the best possible use out of them, it's important to understand some of this. One example would be, an ideal tool that I think a lot of folks could benefit from are protein smoothies. And this is a tool that you can use to actually balance out these macronutrients in your diet. Now, I alluded to smoothies last week when we talked about bouncing back, after you've had one of those bad weeks where everything was, junk food, or you had some alcohol and you're just not feeling so hot. Yeah. So we talked about using protein smoothies to, bounce back on the morning after something like that. Well, they are also a perfect tool for correcting these macronutrients. A lot of diets today, people are trying to do less carbohydrate and more protein, and these smoothies allow you to accomplish that. So here's an example of a basic smoothie and how it fits in with our discussion.
Oh, boy.
So I like to blend 2 scoops of MRM, all-natural whey protein, and that provides about 36 grams of protein, which is pretty good amount for a whole meal, with half of a bag of frozen berries. Just your standard small bag of berries that you get at any grocery store. They're usually around 10 or 12 ounces. Wow. So for 2 people, I do a whole bag. For 1 person, I do half. And that's only about 15 grams of carbohydrate for a whole half bag of berries. So I throw those 2 scoops of protein powder, half a bag of berries, along with about a teaspoon of healthy fat like flax oil or a Barlean's Omega Swirl that'll have fish and flax oil mixed together, and then just put in enough water into the blender to cover this. And I just, blend it, and I end up with this like delicious, cool, sweet, creamy drink. You can use these for breakfast. You can use these for an after-school snack. You can use these for a late-night snack if somebody's got the munchies. I mean, they really work well, and if you think about it, what happens when you're trying to do a higher protein diet? You start getting sick of protein pretty quick.
Yeah.
How many chicken breasts a day do you want to eat?
Yeah, I've done the Atkins thing before, and even some of the other plans that are out there today. And you by the 3rd or 4th day, you're just craving carbs.
Right.
I mean, big time.
It's true. I've done them many times as myself as well. I'm a big believer in self-experimentation with nutrition, at least on me, and maybe folks like yourselves can benefit from that. But long story short, I've done the Atkins diet myself a number of times, and you're right. You end up craving carbohydrates like some sort of carbohydrate craving monster.
Gotcha. I'll just eat the toppings off the pizza. No.
Oh, you're desperate. You're totally desperate.
I'll just eat this bit.
Right. And so that's what we're talking about, balance. And the newer trend is not so much let's exclude an entire category of nutrients like all of our carbohydrates or all of our fat, but actually to try to achieve some balance. And in the case of carbohydrates, the general trend is to kind of balance them out, to modulate them. So what folks will do is they'll eat just enough carbohydrates to provide for their basic energy, and that happens to be just enough to keep you from craving them like a maniac, but not so many carbohydrates that they're stimulating your blood sugar. Right. And that's where tools like these smoothies come in, because they give you a way to have some control over these numbers, but you're not eating a salty, savory, meaty thing. And, of course, you're going to have that at other times that day, but, again, how many chicken breasts a day can you have?
Yeah, in that balance, I guess, is what it's all about, and using the tools that you're giving us on this program. Right. The tools meaning the shakes, what you put in them, what you do take, what you do ingest, to help even that out. Isn't it true, though, that once you get past a certain point, let's talk about that for a second, because I've got some questions about that.
Sure.
If you're on a high-protein, low-carbohydrate diet, diet meaning what you're eating, not necessarily losing weight, but
Sure.
you're going to, then isn't it true that ketosis sets in at a certain point? How many days is that normally? What's going to happen?
This is a fun question.
Yeah.
If one is trying to do a low carbohydrate diet, and I'll just throw in the point that you can't even succeed at a low carbohydrate diet if you don't understand macronutrients.
Yeah.
You have to know what's protein, carbs, and fat. But
Right.
anyways, if you're embarking on a low carb diet, your body typically has about 3 to 4 days worth of carbohydrates stored.
Still stored.
Right. And those are stored inside of your muscles, and they're stored inside of your liver. And so it takes about 3 to 4 days of no carbs in your diet before you burn through all of them in your body, and then you'll start having to convert fat into these things called ketone bodies, which is something that your body can burn in place of carbohydrate.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
very cool trick. A lot of people tend to lose muscle on these diets, though, because the funny thing is, even though they're not eating carbs and they're eating supposedly a low-protein diet, they tend to actually maybe overconsume fat in these diets.
Yep.
And Atkins was an advocate of that. But in my own experience, what I see with consumers is that they'll be doing a lot of bacon and cheese and things that actually...
High fat.
Right. In our macronutrients, these are things that are maybe 90% fat and 10% protein or 15% protein. So there is something to be said for balance even within something like the Atkins diet.
Interesting. And then once you do experience ketosis, then you shouldn't crave carbohydrates as much.
Well, that is true. When people do finally get into ketosis, because their body is using an alternative source of fuel, it's actually converting fats into these ketone bodies. The reason for that is because your brain can only burn carbohydrate. It can't burn fat, but it can burn it if it gets converted into a ketone body. So,
Okay, but
Go ahead.
My question then would be, let's say you've reached ketosis after 4 or 5 days, and you've expended the carbohydrates that are naturally in your liver, and as you said, still in your muscles. Then at some point you cheat, and you go to Olive Garden and you have some pasta.
Right.
Their steak gorgonzola, which is incredible. I'm giving them a free plug here. Cha-ching! Oh, thank you for the free dinner, Olive Garden. Now, what happens then is that what happens to do you wait another 3 days?
Good question. If you've only, what you're describing is a cheat meal, actually.
Yeah.
And this is a major concept in the world of nutrition and fitness. So, cheat meals are not a bad thing, especially if you only have one. So, let's say you have that big pasta dinner. You go to Olive Garden, you eat breadsticks, you have dessert. Now, you could easily consume something crazy like 200 grams of carbohydrate in a meal like that. And if you just so happen to pay attention to your macronutrients, and I bet Olive Garden's got these numbers on their website, you could even figure it out. But who cares? So you eat this big meal, and you store up some carbohydrates now. Well, the good news is that you really probably can only eat about enough to last for half a day or a day. So you've only gotten yourself out of whack for maybe 24 hours.
Yeah.
So if you immediately go back to eating zero carbs or very low carbs, within 24 hours you'll be back into ketosis, and you'll be doing just fine.
Fascinating.
However, that cheat meal will have spiked your metabolism.
And then you might lose quicker.
Exactly.
And it works the other way around with protein, I understand, too, because sometimes when people, their bodies go into a starvation mode, if you cut, and I'm talking about cutting everything back. If you cut everything back, food, your body says, okay, wait a minute now, this person is, I'm starting to starve, so therefore I'm going to slow my metabolism down. And then that's when people are trying to lose weight and they reach those plateaus.
Yep. And
I was told that what you do is eat a bunch of protein and it'll spike up your metabolism. And I was told to do that, and then I lost another 3 pounds pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's a valid
could protein
point.
or carbs work with that?
Basically, what it comes down to is more food.
Yeah, interesting. I just learned something. I always thought protein was one, but then we're talking about the carbs.
Right. Protein will stimulate metabolism, so there's a definite point there. It actually takes more calories to burn and digest protein than any other nutrient. That said, carbohydrates will give you an insulin response.
Right.
And they are tricky to deal with, but in a situation where you're in a low-carb diet, they can actually do what's called, and I mentioned it a second ago, spiking your metabolism. We're all familiar with this idea that our metabolism slows down when we diet, right?
Right.
Okay, and you were just alluding to that. Well, basically, what if there was a trick you could use to spike your metabolism so that you started burning a little bit more calories even though you've been dieting? And that trick is eat more food short term. So one big cheat meal.
You mean cheat.
Exactly.
I
cheat.
love it.
You'd be amazed.
The funny thing about that is that people do it all the time anyway because they can't help themselves, but they're actually probably helping the diet.
They are, as long as they don't cheat 3 or 4 times.
Right.
And I am guilty of that sometimes myself.
Yeah.
So one cheat, that's about it if you want to keep on the right track.
Wow. Well, we've just got about another minute and a half here on the show. Folks, you're listening to What About Nutrition with David Gall. He's the owner of O'Fallon Nutrition right there in Veterans Memorial Parkway, close to the entrance of Fort Zumwalt Park, where they have the big celebration of lights in O'Fallon for many years, and close also to JJ's Restaurant right there in Culligan. So it's O'Fallon Nutrition. Great store. I've been in your store, blown away by it.
Oh, thanks a
lot. And the things I'm learning on this show, you can't go into any store. If you went into like a Costco or Sam's where they have all the aisles and aisles of supplements and everything, there's nobody there to teach you this stuff.
That's exactly it.
You're blind.
Our store is about more than just selling supplements.
Yeah.
Obviously, we sell supplements, we sell herbs, and we have great products, but I really have an intention of helping people understand nutrition.
Yeah.
And that's our goal, and that's why this show is going to be a balance between education, and then we'll tie it into things that we have at the store that can help support these goals. But we really do want people to learn.
What's your phone number at the store?
636-240-5283.
That's 636-240-5283?
That's right.
Okay.
And I have to mention our awesome website, www.o'fallonnutrition.com.
Wow, O'FallonNutrition.com. David, we'll see everybody next week. We're out of time. Folks, it is What About Nutrition? It's only right here on Westplex News Talk 94.1 every Saturday morning between 11 and 11:30. This is our second show. Thanks for being with us, David.
Thank you.